I figured I might as well record this side story after doing the first side story, because, why not? But don't worry, I won't release it right after side story 1. As I've said, I will release side story 1 after chapter 10 has gone up, and this side story 2, will be up after chapter 20 has gone up, because it's supposed to take place during chapter 20. So, 14 Sleepyhead 09 will explain to us what side story 2 is about. Now, technically, this is the third short story, but it's actually the second because, as I've mentioned before, I haven't written the other one. This particular story, though, is loosely inspired by the 200th episode of How I Met Your Mother, titled How Your Mother Met Me. So if you know the show or the episode, you'll know where the inspiration comes in. Now enjoy! I've never watched How I Met Your Mother, or the 200th episode, so, I don't know what it's about, but I'm quite intrigued. Side story 2, short story 2 alongside main story, set during chapter 20. A bit of a light spoiler. The night of the huge storm when Plucky and the group are sheltering in his parents' old earth in the town. But it's okay. It's just a small potatoes when it comes to the big picture. So, without further ado, let's read Whisper's Grief. Okay? With Plucky, her only son, having left White Deer Park to pursue the young vixen he had met, Whisper had been left alone with none of her direct family around. Of course, she had her extended family, and quite often she would help Ranger and Charmer, as well as Friendly and Russet, to look after their cubs and teach them the ways of the land and the traditional Farthing Wood spirit she had been introduced to. Charmer, Ranger, and Friendly had also been true to the promise they made to Plucky before he left, to look after Whisper and make her feel included. Often they would invite her out on hunting trips and exploring the, as yet, unexplored regions of the extended park. Whisper did appreciate this, but still, somehow, she felt left out. She felt like something was missing, that there was a hole in her life and in her heart that could not be filled. And she knew why. She missed Bold. I see. Even though she had originally used him for his noble bloodline, a secret endeavor of hers that was clearly successful, Whisper did like Bold's company, and she did grow to love him as he had loved her. But it wasn't until she lost him, though, when she realized it, and she had realized it all too late. Bold's death affected her more than she realized. Whisper fell into a deep depression and illness when she was due to give birth, so much so that 2 of the 3 cubs she did give birth to died hours old. The third, though, he clung on to life with the same determination as his departed father, and that same determination Whisper admired. It was because of that one young fox cub that she herself resolved to live on, giving her the hope and reassurance that Bold had not died in vain. And that young cub grew into a strong, stout, bold fox, which, despite wearing his mother's colors, was the spitting image of his father. And that was Plucky. Oh, I see. Oh my gosh. But now, Plucky had grown and had left her, as was the way of nature, and now she was alone. Now in her solitude, Whisper's past gradually crept back up on her, particularly as she slept. Often she would wake up in tears, having dreamt about Bold. She couldn't escape the guilt or the grief. She blamed herself for his death. She blamed herself for not telling him how much she loved him before he died. Often it was the only thing she could think about. And how different things would have been if she had been more patient. Maybe if they had stayed in the town, Bold would still be with her, and Plucky could have met his father. But she knew the past could not be changed. However, she hid her grief well. She was a strong vixen, not wanting to show any weakness, especially in front of her in-laws. though while she could hide her grief well, it still tore her up inside. She felt like this for a very long time. That is, until she met Fleet. Fleet arrived in White Deer Park just before winter. He was a red fox the same age as Whisper, and a rather handsome fox too. His build was slender and athletic. His coat was a red similar to her own, a white-tipped tail and ears, and a white underbelly. She remembered well the day they met. After all, it wasn't too long ago. While out in the darkened late autumn evening, wandering the park alone, Whisper was shuttered from her thoughts by a friendly, "Hello." She turned to see who it was and half expected it to be someone she knew. But it wasn't. A red fox she'd never seen before stood before her. "Hi," she responded. "You must be new around here. I've never seen you before." "Yeah, I've not long arrived," replied the fox. "I heard rumors this place was a haven for all animals like us." "Yes, it is," Whisper said, confirming the fox's rumor. "Well, at least it is now," she continued, referring to the previous year with a rat invasion. "Well, I guess all the stories are true then," the fox stated, looking around the surroundings in the fading sunlight. He then turned back to Whisper, asking, "What's your name?" "Who wants to know?" questioned Whisper defensively. "Well, I'm Fleet. It's only fair I know who I'm talking to." "I'm Whisper." "That's a beautiful name," Fleet stated, causing Whisper to smile. "I was just about to go hunting. Dunno if you'd like to come along?" "Sorry, but I'm only still a cub," Whisper joked. "Oh, my mistake. I'll be on my way. Nice meeting you," Fleet said, turning away, only to then hear Whisper laugh behind him. "You believe that?" She giggled and continued smiling. "I like you." Fleet looked back, puzzled, but smiled too. "Come on, I know there's best spots," Whisper continued, stepping up next to him, before leading him off to travel into the setting sun to go hunting. Throughout the winter, Whisper and Fleet spent much time together, but kept their relationship secret from the rest of the Farthing Wood animals. Whisper wouldn't know what they would think of her with another fox, even if Bold had been gone a long time, and even if it would have been expected of her to take another mate. Whisper did feel quite guilty, even though she and Fleet weren't officially mates. She felt like she was betraying Bold. They never had a proper goodbye, and even though she was happy spending her time with Fleet, it still haunted her, and Bold still came to her in her dreams. She also thought of her son Plucky, and what he would think of her, but that was the least of her worries about him. Plucky had been away from the park a long time, since the start of autumn. She had no idea where he was or what he was doing. For all she knew, she might not ever see him again. However, she quickly dismissed these thoughts, as she couldn't bear to think of losing her son, and also because there was no chance of it. Plucky was smart, much smarter than her, and of course he was Plucky, just like his namesake. But as important as Plucky was to her, Whisper hadn't told Fleet about him. She'd kept a fair few amount of secrets from him. I imagine that's not going to go well for Whisper in the future. She hadn't told Fleet about Bold either. She didn't know how to, or even to bring it up. She was happy, and the hole in her life and her heart was quickly filling up. But deep in her heart, she still loved Bold, and tried mercilessly to try and let go, but it wasn't any use. Fleet was a nice fox, kind-hearted, fast runner, an exceptional hunter, all traits that Whisper liked. But he wasn't like Bold. Please excuse me, I'm still recording out in broad daylight. And, please don't let the small wind bother you too much, or the sound of cars. The microphone on my phone is working alright. Nothing too bad there. Fleet wasn't so daring, but not to the point where he was cowardly. Very rarely would he try anything new or do something that was considered dangerous. And while Bold had respected Whisper's need for some independence, Fleet did not. Whisper knew that Fleet only acted the way he did because he cared for her, and it didn't necessarily annoy her, it was only things she had noticed. To her, it was a friendship, a close friendship. But it wasn't love. She only wished she'd done or said something about it, before one stormy night at the start of spring. The storm had not reached the park yet, but the animals felt it coming. Everyone was in shelter by the time the thunder could be heard far in the distance, but the rain had already arrived. Whisper had taken refuge with Fleet inside his earth near the edge of the park. They were both lying down, staring out the entrance of the rain. "It's really coming down, huh?" Fleet said, not moving his gaze from the entrance. "Yes, it is," Whisper replied with a chuckle, also without breaking her stare. "But it's only going to get heavier." Some time passed as the light outside went dull. Whisper and Fleet stayed lying next to each other and sharing each other's warmth. "So, I was just wondering," Fleet pondered out loud, turning his head to look at Whisper. "Truck!" "Sorry about that. We've been hanging around and doing a lot together, so I thought..." He paused. "Go on," reassured Whisper, who was now looking back at him. "Can I ask you something?" Fleet questioned. "Okay," Whisper replied with a slight pause. "Well, I like you, Whisper, so I was wondering, would you be my mate?" Fleet continued, looking affectionately into Whisper's eyes. Oh my. This is exactly what I was talking about, you guys. Whisper should have told Fleet everything. She's gonna be in a world of trouble. Poor communication kills indeed, doesn't it? Whisper was shocked, but she didn't show it. She felt like such an idiot. She should have told him about her past earlier. Now she had made Fleet fall in love with her, but she really didn't know how she felt, and now she was most likely about to ruin her friendship and break the heart of this fox that had been very kindly been there for her the last few months. She knew, though, there was one thing she had to do before she did anything else. And what would that be? "Can you give me a minute?" she said with a stutter while standing up. Okay, Fleet replied, a little confused. Yep. I knew that would happen. I knew this would happen. "There's someone that I need to talk to." Whisper turned to leave the earth and then looked back, saying, I'll be right back." Could have just said that you needed to get some air since the rain was slowing down a bit, but... Jesus. And I don't think we're going to be seeing Fleet again after this side story. I don't know. It's going to suck. It is going to suck for Whisper, I will say. she walked out into the rain. It didn't bother her much. It was still fairly light, as the bulk of the storm was still a while away. It was late in the evening, and the thick cloud cover meant it was darker earlier than usual. She came to a part of the park she thought was perfect, a small gap in the trees that featured a ledge looking down upon a meadow. Whisper could see clearly into the cloud-filled sky, which is what she needed. She lifted her head up, her ears folded down, and sat on the moss-covered stone on the ledge, curling her tail around her legs, and called up with a heavy heart. Hi, Bold. It's me. Probably the last person you want to hear from. A tear escaped her eye that quickly mixed with the rain falling on her. Sorry to interrupt. I know you're probably up there, roaming free, like you always wanted. With a sorrowed chuckle, but then immediately stopped, she continued. Look, I've got a situation here. Looking down, and then back up to the sky again. I think that I've been holding myself back from not just finding another mate, but from falling in love again. And I think it's because I can't let you go, she whimpered, with more tears running from her eyes. But you're not here anymore. And I keep blaming myself, and it's tearing me apart. So, I have to ask this. Would it be okay if I moved on? She paused, looking intently into the cloudy sky with her widened, watery eyes. Whisper then continued. I realize that you have no way of answering that, but, She paused as a sudden gust of strong wind blew into her, pushing her backward slightly and forcing her to blink, making more tears run down her face. Oh, okay. I will take that as yes. Looking back into the sky, conclusively before further saying, in that case, I should get back. She stood back up and turned to return to her shelter. Before, though, she had to say it now at least. She turned back to look at the sky. I guess this is it. She paused, taking a deep breath. For real this time. Her face scrunched up, stifling her need to burst into tears, but to no avail when they freely left her eyes. Goodbye, Bold. On her return to Fleet's Earth, Whisper had tried mercilessly to hide her sobbing tears, though the persistent rain had made it easier. She walked in the entrance and found Fleet still lying there, eagerly awaiting her return. Upon seeing her, Fleet lifted his head, his ears perked up. So? He asked eagerly. Oh my god, this is gonna break my heart. I know it is. Jeez. Listen, Whisper said, quickly pausing, taking a heavy breath, until continuing. I never told you this before, because I didn't know how I could. Fleet didn't say a thing. He only laid there listening closely, allowing Whisper to continue. I had a mate before, a long time ago, and... She paused, holding back her tears. And he died. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea, Fleet said apologetically. Well, it's not like I spoke openly about it. I also have a son, but he's gone off into the world on his own now, Whisper spoke sincerely. I'm sorry if you felt like I deceived you. No, I understand, Fleet said, trying to repress his own sadness. But my answer is no, Whisper concluded. Oh, okay, Fleet said, saddened, looking down at the floor, his ears drooped. Whisper then quickly carried on, as Fleet looked back up at her. You'll find your own mate someday, Fleet, but I'm sorry. That vixen isn't me. She paused again, her eyes watering. I'm sorry, Fleet. I have to go. She gave him a short, compassionate nuzzle and quickly left the earth, but stopped just before she went outside and turned before finally saying, Goodbye, Fleet. What is it with this freaking story trying to make me cry? Especially this freaking side story. I know about Bald's death. I looked it up online. I haven't seen all of season 2 with the events leading up to his death yet, but I did see his death scene, and it was a... Why am I so out of the loop with this show? Why did I just have to read this whole story while having watched almost all of season 1 and most of season 3, but just less of season 2? Oh my god. Oh my god! I'm sorry, guys. I just needed to get that out. Let's just finish. Goodbye, Whisper. Whisper then left Fleet's Earth, not knowing if she would or should ever come back. She just broke the poor fox's heart. It would take some time before they could ever face each other again. She felt terrible. Not only could she still not let Bold go, she had just lost a very good friend in Fleet. She ran through the wood of White Deer Park, crying as she went. The rain now being so heavy, it was quickly drenching her fur. The thunder was also louder. It was right overhead, but it didn't frighten her, nor would the flash from the lightning as it usually would have. It was almost completely dark, but she could still vaguely see where she was going. It wasn't long before she found herself back on Farthing Land, her home, though felt just as out of place as she did anywhere else. She slowed down to a walk to catch her breath, even still with the pouring rain drenching her through to the bone. Don't pay any attention to that, please. Whisper? Someone called out to her in a calm voice. Whisper looked round, wondering where the voice had come from. For a second she fought through the poor visibility of the darkness and thundering rain that she saw Bolt standing before her. It was only once the figure came closer to her that she realized that it was revealed to be Charmer. She then realized she had just walked past Charmer and Ranger's Earth. What are you doing out in this? Charmer asked, referring to the great tempest above their heads. What are you doing out? Whisper replied, wanting to avoid any conversation with anyone. I couldn't sleep through the thunder, so I was just watching the storm when I saw you walk past. Are you okay? You look upset. Charmer was good at reading emotions. Whisper knew there was no point hiding them from her. I'm okay. It's a bit complicated. I just feel a bit lonely right now, that's all. Well, if you want, you can stay with us tonight. Ranger is fast asleep, and the cubs have moved out now, so there's plenty of room. That's very nice of you, Charmer, Whisper interrupted. But I'd rather be left alone to my thoughts at the moment. Okay, Charmer said, almost disappointed. She turned to head back to her earth before continuing. Do remember, though, that you are not alone. We're all here if you need us. Thank you, Whisper said with a slight smile. Charmer smiled back to her, before returning into her earth with her mate and escaping the heavy rain. Whisper carried on through the park, enduring the now full force of the storm around her. A rough and fierce wind cut through the trees, breaking branches and causing the trees to lean ever so slightly. The pitch-black darkness was momentarily ceased by the bright flashes of lightning, and the world echoed with the booming and rumbling thunder that followed. The ground was becoming waterlogged with the intense and frequent rain, creating puddles and thick mud that Whisper's paws sank into as she wandered on. She then came across Plucky's unoccupied earth. She was desperate to get into some shelter now, so without hesitation, she entered her son's earth to escape the storm. Despite the fact Plucky's earth had been empty and unused since he left, it still had his scent. Whisper found this comforting. She proceeded inside and tried to shake as much water from her drenched fur that she could. Plucky had certainly dug himself a nice home here. It was a large earth supported by some roots from 2 nearby trees. The trees made sure the soil inside was nice and dry, and there was less chance of any water flowing into the entrance. There was also a moss bedding on the floor, making it rather comfortable too. Whisper was very proud of her son. She could only wonder how the world outside the park was treating him. She missed him, but her maternal instinct was telling her that he was perfectly fine. A sudden clap of thunder then made her jump. Normally in this mood she would have gone out hunting or exploring in the night. But the darkness and storm outside was overwhelming, so instead she thought it was probably time to get some sleep. It had been a long and upsetting day. She lay down on the moss-covered floor and curled her thick, bushy tail around her to help keep warm, closing her eyes to the sound of the rain and thunder. Whisper drifted off to sleep, wondering what she could expect to dream of tonight, and hoping tomorrow would be a better day. Little did she know as she slept, drowning in a well of sorrow, come the morning, after the storm had passed, she would receive some good news from an old and dear friend. We'll wait till we get to chapter 20, and then we'll see who that old friend is and what the good news is. But until then, have a good day. Later.